caged by so much fear. She's crying, oh, 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 Heavenly Father, heal our land. Heavenly Father, stretch forth your mighty hand.
This is Called Out Gospel Radio, and it's time for Land Matters with attorney Gloria Brown. Of course, it's aired every Tuesday right here on Called Out Gospel Radio at 7:30 p.m. Jamaica time. Tune in to be informed and blessed, whether it's matters of buying, selling, and subdivision of land, writing and probing will and testaments, acquiring, modifying land titles, and so much more. Tune in and be blessed. It's over to you now, Attorney Brown. God bless you.
You too. Thank you so much, and welcome again, listeners, to Land Matters. Aired every Tuesday, as you were just told, on Called Out Gospel Radio, operating outside of Ocherius. My name is Gloria Brown. So anything land related, please send a message to 876-868-5109 or 876-535-8186. So anything related to land, you want to get a title for your land, you want to buy land, sell land, you are having a concern about probating a will in order to acquire land, any land matter, just send me a text message on 876-868-5109 on this Called Out Gospel Radio. And I want to talk a little bit about breaches and modifications of covenant. And persons need to note that when you are buying land, don't just say, I see a piece of land and I want to buy a piece. If somebody has 100 acres of land and you want to buy 1 acre, or they have 1 acre and you want to buy a quarter acre, you have to get a surveyor to survey the entire property in order to apply for what we call subdivision approval. So you don't just see land and say, sell me a piece. You're not going to be able to get a title because the local authority, the parish council, we call them the municipal corporation these days, they have to apply, you have to apply to them for permission to cut up land, which is why you see a lot of persons, they have bought land or their relatives have died and left land for them, or they have been gifted a piece of land and they have difficulty getting a title for the property because they have not got the relevant authority, the approval, we call it subdivision approval. So what happens is that the surveyor would have to come into the property. So for example, let's use an example. A person has 10 acres of land and you are buying a piece, or your father has 10 acres of land and he has given you a piece. So the surveyor would have to come in, get the entire property, the entire 10 acres surveyed, and show your piece as a subset, show your piece inside of the 10 acres. And then the surveyor prepares about 25, we call them blueprints, because they're on a bluish paper. 25, that's the application for subdivision. The surveyor prepares those and send them to the parish council. We call them the parish council for now, even though we know it's now called the municipal corporation. They are now called municipal corporations. So the surveyor will prepare those 25 prints and send to the local authority, and you have a lot of other things, that documents that you will have to send with that, and await the authority to give the approval. If the authority says yes, everything is in order, then they will grant the approval with certain conditions. They might say you need to put in a road, fire hydrant, turning circle, electricity, a lot of things, because these 25 plans will go to different institutions. So you'll have some going to JPS, National Works Agency, Ministry of Health, National Water Commission. So the prints will have to go to different NEPA, that's the National Environment and Planning Agency. So these prints will go to many different agencies for them to comment. And if they all approve, then you'll get the approval. And when the approval comes, you can't just jump and start saying, hey, I can start building now. Because the approval comes with certain conditions, as I say. You might need to put in a road, a reserved road, or a lot of different things they might tell you that you need to put in. So you have to read, and when the approval comes, it comes with a number of conditions, sometimes even 40 odd conditions. Some of them you don't have to pay any attention to. They are standard things that might come on, but you need to look at them. And one condition that usually comes is that one that says that the setting out of road alignment must be approved by the parish council, which means that even when you have got the subdivision, you have to, your surveyor will still need to go back to the parish council to say, yes, everything has been complied with, for the parish council to give a certificate. So don't just give persons your money and say, hey, I'm buying a piece of land from Mr. Green, so I'm going to give him the $1 million that he has said, and then I can start building my house. It's a little bit more complex than that. And Mr. Green might have a title for the 10 acres and has sold you a piece. You don't want to run and start putting your house up now, because your house is going to be in Mr. Green's title. And if Mr. Green decides that he's going to sell his property, your house is going to be sold, or he goes to borrow money and does not pay it back, and the bank decides to sell, everything will be sold. So even if you are in a predicament like that, you have already, this information is a little late for you. And you say, but I have already bought the property, the piece of land, and Mr. Brown has his title, and I still have not got mine. What I would encourage you to do in a situation like that is to lodge a caveat. Okay, some persons call it a caveat. Okay, lodge a caveat against Mr. Brown's title. You use your receipt to show you have paid him your money, and you lodge a caveat. So if he's going to do anything with his title, you are alerted. You will know that he's going to borrow money, so you can put a stop to that, or he's going to sell. When you lodge the caveat, then your attorney who has lodged the caveat for you will be alerted if Mr. Brown decides to do anything about in relation to his land. And I encourage my listeners that do not put anything on a piece of land. Don't put a house, don't put any structure on a piece of land unless you have got a title in your name. So you have bought a little piece of land, and it is Mr. Brown is cutting up, and you have paid your money, and he has given you possession and say, yes, you can do not build until you have that title in your hand. And it is the obligation, the person who is selling has the obligation, it's their responsibility to give you a title for your piece of land. So don't enter these agreements willy-nilly where they say the agreement says he's selling it to you cheaply, so it's your responsibility to get the title. Because a lot of time that becomes a nightmare for you, and many of us won't see these titles in the next 5, 10, 15 years. And you can't afford to make such an expensive investment without any proper documentation. Another thing that you have to be careful, Mr. Brown's title might say the land is not to be subdivided. Because a lot of times when you look at a lot of persons that bought properties, we call them land settlements. They bought them from government, and government want these persons to hold 5-acre lots. They don't want it to be cut up because those properties were sold for farming. So they don't want them to be fragmented. So those titles will say these lands are not to be cut up. And you have bought a piece, what are you going to do? You have already paid your money and put up your house. So sometimes that's a bit of a problem. So a lot of things we need to look out for before we jump into buying property. You're listening to Land Matters on Call Out Gospel Radio. This is a family station, and you're listening to a program called Land Matters with me, attorney Gloria Brown. I have an office in Winchester Business Center in Kingston, and also in Ocho Rios, and I'll be in my Ocho Rios office this Thursday between the hours of about 10 and 12. But my Ocho Rios office is located in the Jamaica National Building. Okay, upstairs, the Jamaica National Building. So any concerns you have, any questions, feel free to give me a call, or give a call to or send a message to 876-868-5109 or 876-535-8186. 876-535-8186. And I encourage listeners to try and sort out whatever land situation you have, whatever land situation you are managing. Please deal with them as soon as possible. Don't leave your land matters for the next generation to find themselves in trouble, because I've seen where a lot of older persons have decided that because they did not get their property sorted out, they got it from their forebears, their forefathers, their parents, grandparents. These relatives did not sort out, and they themselves are reluctant to sort it out for their children. Estate planning is important if we are going to if we are going to leave a legacy. And this is one of the challenges that as persons of color, black persons, because we did not start with any financial foundation as black people. We have we have a challenge leaving a legacy for those who are coming behind us because each of us struggle, each generation is struggling. When you look at other persons, I remember reading an article about some houses that were sold somewhere in America in the 60s. And the persons, one of the conditions was that no black person could buy into these developments. And those properties were sold they were very inexpensive. I think it was like 6,000 US or so. These properties are now worth over $1 million. So the people who bought them now, their children can sell now. So you see what legacy is? Legacy is they have a foundation, they have a start. So a lot of times persons say, oh, black people are no, they don't have any ambition and that's why they live in slums. But as somebody put it like this, it's like when you're running a race, and in our time we used to call it you give a jump. So we're running 100-meter race, but because I'm slow and I'm a woman, you give me a start. And I start at the 50-meter, but you start at the beginning. That's how it is. So a lot of persons, because they are able to leave the generational wealth for their children, the children start way down. So they must win the race because they start way down the line while our people are starting on your marks at the beginning of the blocks. So we need to sort out our land matters, need to start build some generational wealth so our children can be better off and they're not struggling. So we need to get the titles in place so we can help the children to get a loan to be able to go to law school, to be able to go to medical school, to be able to go to to get a skill as a good plumber because as a good mechanic because when it comes to skills in Jamaica, skills are short. The hardest thing is to find a plumber. I don't know about outside in Oteres, but in Kingston, to find a good electrician. So a lot of those skills we need to be able to get our children to get over. We need to be able to have the wherewithal where they not just go and just stay with a man call them now and then to help them, where they can get the formal training. So go to UTech and learn electricity. So you're a great electrician, okay, inspector in those areas. Send them to formalize their training so they can really improve their lots. And that is what we are saying to persons: get the titles, improve the lots of the children, so they can really, really be better off. You're listening to Call Gospel Radio, Land Matters with attorney Gloria Brown. Please send your questions to 876-868-5109 or 876-535-8186. And this evening I'm talking about subdivision, which is really cutting up of land. And a lot of times persons will come into my office and I will say to them, but you need to apply to the parish council for permission to cut up the land. And they will say, but Miss Brown, the land cut up already, the surveyor surveyed. Surveying it is not cutting it. Okay, that is not cutting up land when you survey it. Okay, it's much more complex than that. It's much more complex than that. So don't just go and see land and say, sell me a piece. I tell persons all the time, it's not like cake that you go to the cake shop and say, sell me a slice. It's much more complex than that. And we want our people to be more formal in how they are dealing with the land. Be much, much more formal in dealing with land, which is why we say when you're buying land, get a lawyer for yourself and let the seller go and get a lawyer. Or you're selling land, get a lawyer for yourself and let the buyer go and get a lawyer. But both of you don't use the same lawyer and get a land lawyer. If you are committed a crime, get a criminal lawyer. If you have a family matter, get a family lawyer. Find a specialist in the area. Because a lot of persons sometimes, you lose out on getting the best advice because you have not spoken to a person who is a specialist in that particular area. It's not some simple things like maybe a landlord and tenant where any young attorney can. Some of the matters that you have might be a little more complex that you might need to get somebody who specializes in the area in which you need the assistance. So you have applied to the parish council and you have got your subdivision approval. After you have got the subdivision approval, that is when you really should go and survey the land. You shouldn't get a survey plan for your land until you have got the approval, because the approval sometimes will tell you that the road needs to be changed, the shape of the road. It needs to be chamfered, which means you need to have some extension so you need to have some visibility. So you might have to cut the corner a certain way so that persons coming out are able to see. So after after the subdivision approval and the conditions have been given to you and you have signed them and accepted them, and the conditions will also say how near you need to build, that no building is to go, for example, less than 5 feet from the neighbor or less than 30 feet from the middle of the road. All of those things you have to look into, because those things are to guide you when you are building. So don't just call the carpenter and the mason and say, put up a house here so for me and I want it near the road. Look and see. Because the local authorities these days, they are very strict in relation to the conditions that they are imposing. And they want persons to adhere to the conditions. So don't just go and say, I'm going to put up my house. Look at the conditions that come with the subdivision. The condition might say only a single story house, which means you can't go upstairs. So read the conditions on your title. Some titles don't have any condition written on them. But as long as they are subject to a subdivision, like you're buying to a scheme, then you have to look at the conditions. A lot of times, when you buy into a scheme or where there was a subdivision before you bought, one condition might say that only one dwelling house, and then you have put a house at the back. How are you going to deal with that? Sometimes we solve it by joining the two houses, maybe put a link way, like a covering between the two, and let it join each other and make it into one. But you have to be careful. And another thing, as I said, sometimes it says only one single story house. And while I'm at this, even though this might be an aside, this might not be exactly what I'm talking about, I also want to encourage persons. Don't tell your sons and daughters, don't tell your son or your daughter to go and build upstairs. It is not a good idea. Remember that title is for land. So whatever is on the land is going to be owned by the person on the title. So it's not a good idea to you are the mother and you have your house and you say, my son build upstairs, because what is happening is that a lot of times as we're not thinking about tomorrow. We're not thinking about tomorrow, so we're just thinking of today and say, oh, yes, man, it's my son. But remember that when you pass on now, it might become a problem, because the daughter has downstairs, the son has upstairs. One wants to borrow money, the other one says no. Or they find that the two families have disputes and disagreements, and one can't move and one can't buy out the other. So it's easier to try and get the child to go and find another little piece of land to build, etc., or see if your land can be subdivided. And before you start cutting up land and give persons a piece, go in and talk to the parish council and say, do you allow 1.5 square? Would you allow me to cut off 1.5 square of the land to give to my son? Find out that, get that information first before you tell the son to go and build. And as I say, son before or daughter, before you build, get a title. Don't matter if mama give you a house spot. Do not build on mama's land, because mama could change her mind, or God forbid, mama passes on and the property belongs to all mama's children now. And somebody said, mama gave you the best part and you run into problems. So before you do anything on a piece of land that you have bought or you have been gifted, get a title for it in your name first. So remember I said, if you are going to be buying property or you're a piece of somebody's property, etc., you have to get subdivision approval. Very, very important. You have to get approval. But what happens if my information to you is coming too late? You have already bought your little piece of land and you have your house on it already. If the title says the land is not to be cut up and persons have been cutting up land in the area, then that might be a good thing for you, because you could show to the courts that there is precedent. Because when the title says the land is not to be subdivided, and you have subdivided, you have cut up the land already and get a little piece, or you have subdivided it informally, we call it an informal subdivision, then we can apply to the court for the court to do what we call a modification of covenant. We can apply to the court for a modification of covenant. And what the modification of covenant means is that the court can agree to say the land can be subdivided into two lots. So we'll get the condition on the title that says the land is not to be subdivided. We can get that change to say the land may be subdivided into two lots or three lots or whatever. And then you'll be able to go and do whatever it is that you want to do in terms of the subdivision. Because the court can change that, but it's an expensive process. It's costing over $400,000 to do a modification of covenant, and it takes time. It's a timely thing. So we need to be very, very, very careful in terms of how we deal with that, in terms of how we deal with matters like this, like cutting up land and doing getting title for land without without getting it properly, without dealing with it in a formal way. Because we are very informal, we are too informal in how we deal with matters. And I'm not just talking about title matters, but in so many things, we are so informal. We don't do things in the ways prescribed by law, and then we run into problems. Because things might seem okay for now, but problems can arise later on. So I want us to do the things the proper way before we run into problems. You're listening to Called Gospel Radio on land matters. And remember, if you have a question, you have a comment, you may send that question or comment to 876-868-5109 or 876-535-8186, and I will gladly assist you. My name is Gloria Brown, and I have an office. I'm part of the firm Brown, Findlay and Company, with offices in Ocho St. Anne, that's the Jamaica National Building, Shop 6. That's the JN building at the stoplight in the heart of Ocho Rios. You just go up the steps and Brown, Finlay and Company is on your left. And we also have an office in Winchester Business Center, 15 Hope Road in Halfway Tree, and anything land related. Okay, that's our forte. We'll gladly assist you in buying land, selling land, writing your will, probating the will, administering the estate, getting a title for the land, any land related, anything that relates to land. We're here to help you. And you're listening to Called Out Gospel Radio, as I said earlier, located in Ocho Rios, Jamaica. And the aim of this radio station is to impact lives positively. And we welcome to all joining us via the radio stream or on the app in the Google Play Store or on the YouTube channel. Send your messages to 876-868-5109 or 876-535-8186. And if you want me to get a title for you, just WhatsApp the word title to 876-387-3183. 876-387-3183. Just WhatsApp the word title to that number, and I will assist you. Also, you may say to me, but Miss Brown, the information is coming late. I have already got my little piece of land that my father gave me, or I bought that little piece, or I've been living on this little piece for over a certain period of time and I never got the subdivision. All is not lost. We have a law called this Registration of Titles, Cadastral Mapping and Tenure Clarification Special Provisions Act, a very long name. We just call it the Special Provisions Act, or the SPA of 2005. And under that act, if you can prove that you have had your little piece of land cut off for more than 7 years, we can apply for a waiver of the subdivision. So that's an excellent piece of legislation, if I may say so myself, that has been assisting persons all over to be able to escape the subdivision quagmire, the problems of subdivision. So what happens is that you can get your lawyer to apply for. So you're trying to get a title for your piece of land. There was no title for the land before, or you bought that little piece and you have nothing. You have no title, and the subdivision, you never got subdivision. All is not lost. If you can show that you are on the piece of land for more than 7 years, and so you could show the receipt to say, hey, here's the receipt to show that I have it for a long time, or hey, here's my mother's will to show that she left it for me by the will more than 20 years ago, more than 7 years ago, or anything you have to show that you have had it for more than 7 years. then that documentation can help you to apply for a waiver of the subdivision. But note as well that if the title says the land is not to be subdivided, that piece of law cannot help you. If it says it cannot be subdivided without the approval of the parish council, the law can help you. But if it says it is not to be subdivided, full stop, you still have to apply to the court for that covenant to be modified. You're listening to Cordo Gospel Radio with me, Attorney Gloria Brown. Please remember that Cordo Gospel Radio is located in Ocho St. Anne, and the aim of this station is to impact the lives of listeners positively by educating, informing, and empowering our listeners. Thank you so much for continuing to support this radio station and this particular program, Land Matters. Please tell your relatives, your friends, tell everybody about it so we can together educate, inform, and empower. And remember that my name is Gloria Brown. So this evening I spoke to you about subdivision, what it means to be cutting up land, to let you know that surveying the land is not cutting it up. It needs a little bit more than that. Encouraging you, do not just take your money and buy a piece of land because you see persons selling land. It is much more complex than that. And most times the surveyors, you engage the surveyor before you engage the lawyer, because the surveyors need to get the subdivision, because persons should not be just selling land without having gone through the formalities, which is why we encourage you to get your lawyer to assist you so you are protected. Because I've seen so many persons pass their money, buy land, pass the money to persons, buy land, and then have nothing to show. And remember, when persons are selling land, the government has to get the 2% transfer tax. And if that tax is not paid within 30 days, it doubles to 4%. And if you have given the person all the money, they're not going to give you that money back later on and say, hey, here's the money, go and pay the tax. After persons have got money, they're very reluctant to part with it. So you make sure you don't part with yours so easily. Protect yourself, protect your investment. Land, as I will keep saying, is one of the greatest, it's one of the most expensive investment we will make in our lifetime. Not even a car, well, although some of these cars these days are house price. So some of the cars worth more than land. But motor vehicle and land might be the greatest investment we'll make in our lifetime. So be careful how we make those investments and ensure that when we make these investments, we protect them and we pass them on properly to those coming after us. Let us not leave our children, our beneficiaries, to struggle as we have struggled in terms of getting documentation. Let us make life a little easier for those coming after us, so those who come behind us will find us faithful. I want to thank you so much for listening to Land Matters on Cordo Gospel Radio, which this program Land Matters is aired every Tuesday evening at 7:30 on Cordo Gospel Radio. My name is Gloria Brown, an attorney in Kingston and Ocho Rios. Thank you so much for listening to Land Matters, and I look forward to sharing again with you, God willing, next week Tuesday at 7:30. Have a good evening.